Oh man, you guys are funny.
Well,
Okay, so that's Confucianism, Siddhartha. No thoughts. Being the Buddha, empty, free. Women, they're all the same, yeah. Do you?
I didn't do it. I did. I'm not surprised. Still not.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I got a problem
I'm sorry?
with I just,
Oh,
you work so hard to get it, and I mean, what are you getting? I mean, after you got it all, you passed up so much to get there. It's like, no wonder it's so unattractive in this day and age. Because, I mean, there's not much wisdom out there. Because it's, I mean, it's like the ugly stepsister. Like, why would I go this route? Divine is going to know. I'm not really going to flash. But,
so it's a very complicated class today. Siddhartha, you discussed for wisdom the importance of, I suppose, parents and maybe Chinese culture, going back to Confucianism and how it relates to the US, which is bankrupt in many ways. Meditation, being empty.
I also thought that Buddha was means.
They're all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they came from the region, but they grasped it more than. But anyhow, yeah.
Well, let's tackle the easiest topic, which is meditation. Is that okay, Jameson? It's just very easy. You're going to take notes?
No, just
Of course.
keep my mind moving.
You know, when you have a disagreement with your companion and it just flares up, gets into a fight, you realize being in the same space as your companion is about to suffocate you. And you're looking for a window to jump out from. And since there are no windows to be found, or maybe you just live, on the first floor, even if you jump, you're not going to land anywhere really. You just kind of go into the bathroom, or you go into the bedroom or somewhere and you just sit and you close the door and you don't want to hear anything. And I suppose someone from the outside looking in will say, wow, Jameson or whoever, such an interesting person. There are all these people in the living room and yet they want to walk away from everyone and everything and go into the bedroom. I wonder what they're doing. Maybe they're sitting, meditating, maybe they're writing, maybe they're praying. But the truth is, the only reason why you find yourself in the bedroom or some quiet space is because you're disgusted by the space you were occupying, which was your companion was there, she's screaming at you, she doesn't like you, or maybe you don't like her, and the only way to escape that poisonous environment is to just walk away or run away. There is the meditation of the Buddha, there's a meditation of Confucius, there's a meditation of Muhammad, Jesus, and there's a meditation of people you walk around the lake with their yoga mats, you know. So there are two kinds of meditation. If you want to some extent understand, and I'm going to just make a blanket, as I usually do blanket statements. It doesn't really apply to everyone, but it just makes the conversation a bit easier. You can separate the person from the environment in which they live. You are an American. You are a consumer of products. You are the product of capitalism, however you want to define it. And in the 21st century, you have no choice but to be unhappy, discontent, depressed, confused in so many different ways. Confused about who you are, psychologically speaking, biologically speaking. You're confused what to do about your life. I mean, it's a really, really messy situation, you know. I don't know if you've... Hello, Miss Charlotte. This study was recently done about kids, 5 to 4 to 7 or 8, and they've come to realize that they have difficulty walking, running, keeping balance, you know, the basic things that you and I do because of, first of all, COVID, that kids had to stay home, and so they have lost some physical abilities. And it's not the proper time for them to read, to write, even though it is, because they have other issues, which is mostly physical. So before you talk about meditation, you have to ask yourself, why is it that people want to meditate? Is it because of some spiritual need? Is it because life is far too frustrating? It creates a good amount of anxiety, dread, confusion, depression, loneliness, that it's like having a bad companion, that you just lock yourself somewhere and you have someone telling you, breathe deeply, you know, and close your eyes and have some imaginations, you know, and then kind of connect to them as a form of escape. And how long can you escape your life for? Half hour, maybe an hour. You sign up for a gym. You know, first they take about $250 out of your pocket every month for 4 or 5 sessions of 30, 40, 50 minutes, you know, every 2-3 days. Okay, so you go into a cave for a few minutes and then you come out. When you come out, what do you see? Well, capitalism isn't going to go away. Consumerism is going to go away. Your bad habits, your addictions aren't going to go away. The fact that society has injected inside you all this poison, that's not going to go away. And so you realize that there are 2 forms of people, at least 2 forms of people who walk the spiritual path or the path of meditation. One person, and it's like any other thing in life, you know, whether you're talking about, say, gender issues, whether you're talking about getting married, having a child, it really, for the most part, you have to kind of examine your history, examine the culture in which you're born, to kind of figure out what your chances are in either success or failure. I think these days, whatever you can do to bring about a modicum of peace of mind for yourself, for your friends, it's great, even if it's for 10 minutes. It just doesn't have a long shelf life. It's not going to get you anywhere. I don't think. You know, it's kind of like, you know, forgive me for going on this topic for just a minute. Imagine you have some confusion about if you're a he or a she. Okay? That does not exempt you from the human condition. In other words, let's say I know I'm a he. I still have problems with my relationships. I still have difficulties figuring out how to survive this life. I still have difficulty knowing how to raise my kids well, how to be good to my parents. And your idea of just being focused on a he or a she, it's a very, very small footnote in the grand scheme of things. It's not going to do much for you, you know. And so you always miss the big picture by kind of relating or connecting yourself to such small dots in life. It may give you some release, modicum of comfort for a few minutes, but eventually you have to go back in life. And whatever the pronouns you want to use, as a human being, you have no choice but to figure out who your companion is going to be. That depends on the way you think. And if you can't think well, man, if you're filled with anger, vengeance, it's not going to survive. Matters very little what kind of an animal you are. So the same thing with meditation, So if you really want to understand why people meditate, examine capitalism and what it does to people. Examine media, examine technology. If you don't examine those things, it doesn't matter even if you're the Buddha, if you can produce miracles. At the end of the day, you live in Oakland. Any other, Kevin? What is it?
Well, it's just, I understand what you're saying. It's like, I need to just, sometimes, it's not that one thing, it's a bunch of things that I think I got to take care of, but they're always in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So then I need to go someplace and look at something else. And what that does is that allows me to reset a little bit. It takes me just off the circuit of what I'm normally thinking. Something different. And that's my, I make maybe an hour or so, but it feels like it gives me another.
Sure. For those of you who are looking for some changes to make for yourself in your life, find someone like Gurdjieff. He was an Armenian philosopher. He didn't like people like me. He didn't enjoy, people coming to classrooms, standing on a stage and just talking about how things are. That if you're angry, read a couple of books, talk to someone. It doesn't work that way. The way he used to kind of, I think, make things work or create changes, if he accepted you as a student, and that's one of the marks of a really, really good teacher, it's not open to public. It's like Costco. If you want to go in there, you need to be a member. And becoming a member is always, always going to be difficult. It's like if you're 18 and you want to have a boyfriend who's 18, you don't need to be a member. 18-year-olds are just stupid. Anyone who walks by them, they say, yeah, what's your phone number? But if you're 18 and you're attracted to someone who's like in their 50s, and they think really well and they're very solid, they're going to ask you a lot of difficult questions, and there's a good chance that you're going to fail miserably. And they're going to walk away and you'll miss your chance. So Plato, Aristotle, Gurdjieff, all the occults, all the traditional religions, the founders like Jesus, Muhammad, these are like cultish people. They examine who their customer is because they don't want to waste their time. And it's kind of like the gospel saying, why throw jewels before swines? Some of us in this class have girls, 16. And the 16-year-old one day comes home, and she's holding this boy's hand and says, Dad, this is my boyfriend. The father's not going to be happy. They're going to assault this young, tiny boy with all these awful questions. What are you doing? Did you go to school? Do you smoke? Do you drink? And the kid doesn't know what to do. He wants to run away, but he can't, and after a while, he just runs away, and your daughter comes and says, Dad, did you really need to assault him like this? And the father says, absolutely. That's what cults used to do. They don't want to waste their time. They don't want to waste their teachings. And so this is what Gurdjieff would do, for example. Let's say you're into meditation, for whatever the reasons may be. He asks you a bunch of questions to make sure that you're not your foundation is not broken. All of us are cracked, but if you're broken, man, it's finished. Okay. Now, then he'll take some money from you, and then he'll make sure that you really, really like him, maybe even love him. Maybe you'll take your wife to him as well as a student. Now that you have no other place to go but to his place, you start pushing those buttons. Now it's called controlled, a very controlled environment. He pushes a button, you go crazy, he calms you down, and he tells you what's going on. And he does this over and over and over again until you no longer react. Because buttons are nothing but, you push inside people and they react, they go nuts. It's very difficult to be stoic. Stoic in the sense that you know what life does. Life is there to push buttons. Can you stand outside of life? Look at yourself while life is pushing you around. And then by the time you are able to get outside of life, your intellect is very, very sharp. Your emotions are extremely refined. And even if life pushes you, you won't react. You simply sit back and observe. And from that place of observation, you kind of figure out, okay, what is my best option? How do I want to do this? And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. So that's the best form of meditation. If that's a little too difficult, there's a guy that came out in, I think 1880 something. His name was Krishnamurti. He was Indian. He was picked up by the Theosophical Society, which was in charge of finding the next Messiah. They had read the Old Testament, the New Testament, some of the Hindu and Buddhist scriptures, and they came to realize that every 2,000 years a Messiah is supposed to come around. And there is only one reason for Messiahs to come. A Messiah only appears on this planet because things have gotten really, really bad. It's like, when do you go out and ask people for money? Well, because you don't have any money left. When do you go to the doctor? When you realize that, over-the-counter medication is no longer helpful to you. When do you go see a dentist, especially if you're not in a privileged position? When, it's hitting the nerve and you're screaming and you can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't do anything. So Krishnamurti was basically taken from his parents. His father, namely his mom, had died much earlier. And he was trained in the occult. No one could touch his plates. No one could touch his utensils. No one could just go and sit next to him or talk to him, because they believe that people have poison on the inside and they don't want Krishnamurti to be infected or contaminated. It's like you go into a party or you come into this classroom and you sit next to someone and they just feel a little funny. You feel like they're poisonous, they're angry, they're just messed up in some strange way. And you kind of just pack up your stuff and you go sit over there, And that's how they felt about Krishnamurti, how important he is to the world. And so they trained him. And he had kind of like what you had mentioned earlier, he had all these experiences, profound, but he said, what, I'm not here after experiences. I don't want to have like profound dreams. I mean, what's the benefit of having a profound dream? Let's just say you have a dream about sitting next to Jesus Christ and he's telling you all this wisdom. What is that going to do for you? Well, your dream is going to exist in space and time. In other words, you get up from the dream, you're profoundly excited. And then your dream slowly fades. You can't remember as much. It no longer is as interesting, because that's what a relationship is. As long as your relationship exists in time, eventually you will lose interest. And so Krishnamurti ultimately turns his back towards this organization that basically, seasoned him. And he says, no, I don't really care about this stuff, all this power, kind of like Malcolm X. I want to understand things. It's not about feeling good. I want to understand. And that's your point about wisdom. And why should anyone desire to walk towards a cross, find it, and then carry it? I mean, it's too much. I mean, you're not talking about a cross that weighs like a feather. You're talking about a cross that goes back to the mythical figure Atlas, the Greek, that single-handedly he just puts the world on his shoulders and carries it. His knees are bent, his back is broken, and it's heavy, man. Imagine if you have a daughter or a son or some person in your life that you care for, you love, and they come to you and they tell you their secret, or they tell you that they have cancer. And let's say you're 15, and your father comes to you and says, I have cancer. What the hell are you going to do, man? That truth is going to remove any fun that you want to have that day, or for the next, 10, 15, 20 years. You know that you have to take your father every single day to Kaiser. You have to kind of bathe him, clean him. One of the best movies you'll ever watch. You should actually go home and watch it right now. It's called The Judge, Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall. It's a beautiful movie. It's really just about this kid who doesn't like his father, but eventually grows to love him, only to realize that the father, is sick and is going to die, and he just kind of leaves his position as a lawyer, and he takes care of his father, in some small village, some town. But the point I'm trying to make is, going back to Krishnamurti, is that he walks away from the whole thing and he says, you know what, meditation is not going to solve any of your issues. The only way you can really solve your issues is by being able to think well. And the only way you can think well is closing your eyes, metaphorically speaking, and brutally examining everything that lives inside and outside of you. And be very, very honest. Do not self-deceive. And you won't find very many good things. One of the best, perhaps, it's a tiny little pamphlet. What is it called? Dialogue with Oneself, I think, maybe. It's about love. So he kind of sits back and kind of takes his audience on this journey. What is love? Is love about attachment? Is love about fear? Is love about loneliness? Is love about jealousy? And just in case you have fallen in love with your companion, with any of those existing components like loneliness, jealousy, depression, it's not love. You're kind of just using another human being to get yourself out of a certain situation. And eventually it's going to backfire. And one of the things we have discovered in the 21st century is, since no longer any traditional values are in play, if you have walked into any relationship with little or no self-reflection, it won't stand a chance. It'll fall apart.
So what you're saying is the long-range relationships are dead. Like it used to be, you have a handful of 20, 30-year-old marriages, and now, because of the options that are out there now, those things don't really happen. But when they get married, it's already a countdown to the divorce. Day one. I mean, you aren't staying together forever, no more. Not the young.
Eventually, you kind of pick up the stuff of your environment. No one is exempt from it. It doesn't really matter how safe your environment is. I'll tell you, some years ago, I dropped off my daughter at school, and there was a young girl just waiting to go, inside the classroom, and she was wearing this really, really short skirt. And I suppose in this day and age, it's her right, it's her freedom of expression of, I don't know which commandment or amendment it is. But she had no underwear. She had nothing underneath. And, that's a great amount of power to have as a woman, as a young woman. First, because men are visual creatures. Second, because especially if you have come from an environment where you haven't really had much power in your life as a young woman. Your father wasn't around, and if he was, perhaps he didn't give you much attention. Maybe it's just a stage that people go through. You get to be 12 or 13 or 14, you want independence, you want freedom of expression. And there's a great amount of poverty you find yourself in. I don't care about how my father thinks about me. I don't care about how my mother thinks about me or how God thinks about me. I want my friends to think about me a certain way, but I don't know how to go about doing that. So the best thing, the easiest path is using your physical body. And so what happens is you sit somewhere, and especially young men are looking at you again. They are visual creatures, and they keep looking at you and laughing at you, smiling at you, some of them coming to you, asking you for your phone number. That's a great amount of power to be given to a 15 or a 16 or a 17-year-old. That I have this great body, and I can flaunt it, and through it, I can mesmerize a lot of men out there. And the point, again, I'm trying to make is, for whatever the reasons are, people, look, to kind of make a long story short, let me just tell you what philosophy or what reflection or what thinking is really. You know, human nature is profoundly nasty. It really, really, really is. It's just nasty, period. We are pathetic little animals in the middle of nowhere. We have to figure out who we are, what we ought to do with our lives. I mean, it's devastating, your position and my position in life. It is. And so you have no choice but to lie, but to cheat, but to deceive, self-deceive and other deceive. You know, we have no choice. I mean, it's part of survival. It's something that Darwin alluded to. You look at your environment, you know, and you have to fit in. You don't want to be an outcast. You don't want to come to class and be mean-spirited because you won't have any friends. So even if you don't like any one of us in this classroom, you will pretend as if you like us. I mean, that's the political game that all of us in this class have to play, not only in the classroom, but in romantic relationships, in jobs that you have, and in the social world where you walk. People look at you nastily. Well, you have a couple of options. Either punch them or smile at them. Well, you can't punch them because they're like twice your size, okay? And so you have to make all these political games. And human nature is very, very organic. It tells you exactly what you need to do. Reflection, on the other hand, means the following. You have to stand outside of yourself and examine your own nature and how it is and how it has been shaped or conditioned by its surrounding. That's way, way too much. And the moment you become really, really good at the art of reflection, it forces you to go against human nature. Imagine for a moment that you go somewhere and you become attracted to someone sitting across the room. Well, if you're not in the business of reflecting, thinking about things clearly, honestly, there's a good chance that you'll act like all the other people in the party. You're just going to go out there and you're going to compete. Look at me. My name is so-and-so. I am 6'9". I have lots of money. I can show you a good time, right? Like all the other people. If you happen to be reflective, you're going to say, I don't even know her. Do I really want to be deceived by that mirage? How she just looks on the outside? I wonder what sort of demons she has on the inside. And the moment you take a couple of steps forward, you say, okay, why are you going to her? Are you lonely? Are you desperate? Are you depressed? Why can't you be a bit more self-sufficient? And all of a sudden you realize, well, that's your initiation into wisdom. And all of a sudden you realize that every time you want to move towards someone and say hello, you double check yourself. Why are you saying hello to her? Well, you want attention? Are you really that pathetic? And in some ways, the art of self-reflection also leads you to you checkmating yourself. There is nothing you can do. You want to be self-sufficient very much like God, but then there is human nature. The moment you become self-reflective, it means you have to go against your nature. And that's way, way, way too much for any person to carry. And there is, you know, sometimes when I read, because I teach the New Testament, it's a really, really good book, the four Gospels, not the rest of them. And, you know, these moments where even Jesus, he says, you know what, it's just too much, man. I just don't want to do this anymore. In the garden, you know, he says, let this cup pass by me. I know too much. I see too much. I carry too much. I'm a 30-year-old guy. Let me just go out and have some fun. You know, why do I have to carry all this crap on my shoulders, man? I didn't choose to carry the sins of everybody on my shoulder. And by that, really, it means the following. Imagine like one of you, let's say one of these 19-year-olds comes to you and says, I'm in love with so-and-so. You're almost a 70-year-old man. You've been there. You've done that. You know the longevity of love, especially puppy love. And, you know, what can you do? You want to give them some of your wisdom, some of your experience. It just falls on deaf ears. You get frustrated. And eventually you say, listen, good luck. I hope it works out for you. There's a good chance it may not. But just in case it doesn't, make sure you're built tough so you're not broken. I mean, you see too much. It's not like you go inside everybody and you carry their sins. You just know what's waiting for them. And it's too much. Why are people laughing? Well, for the most part, they're stupid. Why are people crying? Well, because, I mean, that's the only way we can really wrestle with grief. You know? And in the end, someone like Jesus with all this wisdom, what does he see? Okay, what benefit is there for someone to gain the whole world but lose his own soul? All right, so you become a CEO, you go to school, you know, get some A's and B's and C's, you go to Yale or somewhere, you get a great job, and in the end there are these moments, you know, where you look at your life and you find everything to be hollow, without meaning. Now, linking that to his question, Confucianism, it is a beautiful tradition. Beautiful tradition. I think for those of you in this class who find yourself sometimes at a loss as to what it is you ought to do with your short, pathetic little life, don't do Christianity, don't do Islam, don't do Judaism, well, maybe Islam and Judaism. Don't do Buddhism, don't do Taoism. Confucianism is really your savior, and I'll tell you why. You know, Confucius was a very, very grounded man, and I think it was mostly because of his temperament. I mean, some temperaments are like Jesus, they're introverts. They say, you know what, no matter, you can have a house, it'll never be a home. You can have a bed, it'll never be a resting place. You could have a companion, you're never going to eradicate moments of loneliness. Okay, that's Jesus. Moses, on the other hand, says, no, you don't want to do that, really. Forget the first 4 commandments, because the first 4 commandments are a bit more esoteric, little spiritual. Always pay attention to the last 6 commandments. And last 6 are invitation of you and your connection to the physical world. Be good to your parents. That's all you need to do. Be good to your parents, man. If your parents like you, and here's the thing, I mean, most of this stuff is not really expressed clearly for us. If you're good to your parents, if you let your parents like you, and there's only one way you can have your parents like you, just goddamn it, listen to them. If they say don't smoke, just don't smoke. If they say don't go out with that person, just don't go out with the person. If they say take out the trash, just take out the trash. Because just in case you need money, they'll give it to you. They like you. And when someone likes you, they're emotionally attached to you. And when someone is attached to you, they are more than willing to sacrifice their own self, what they have, so that you could gain some happiness.